So, hello, and welcome to something a little bit different. Okay? So, this year I have bowed to what can only be described as peer pressure, and a lot of peer pressure, and have decided to do some React videos. But, whilst a couple of very good friends, were very happy for me to do their videos, and a couple of others were not that but worried. Some of the other people I approached were basically going, well, you've never done a React video and we'd rather not be marked by an academic. And I was sort of going, well, what can I do to reassure you? Well, we can't see any React videos because we haven't done any. I thought, well, right. So this year I'm going to do React videos to my own content. That's it. I'm going to literally go through my own videos. I'm going to go through the 6 lowest performing videos. This is the 6th to the bottom. Videos, they can't be academic skills videos because I never expect those to. Well, they are literally for people to go and look. They are literally given to my students to go and watch when they have problems with their essays, etc. So the academic skills writing, the ones in the writing, etc. I'm not counting those, and the ones which were 2 books to review and those sort of things, I'm not counting as well because that series never did. That series was always very much dependent on what the topic of the book was, how well it did. But, and I say this most concertedly, for random books, well, some of those videos have done incredibly well. And the fact that some of these are down in the bottom really sort of surprised me. So I'll be interested to see why this one is. This one is the sick from bottom video. It's not purely just from this series that are actually down in the bottom. Honestly, there is another video which I'm really not sure why it is in the bottom, but yeah. So some of these videos will be longer, some of these videos will be shorter. They're going to depend on the length of the video I'm reacting to, of course, how long they are, and I hope you're going to enjoy it. Feedback is always welcome. I am recording these videos this week. There's going to be 10 Wednesdays over the Christmas period. They're all going to be loaded up this week. Like I am doing all the comment response videos as much as I can this month. So the comment response videos will all be in. The shorts for Christmas will all be in before the end of November. These videos will all be in, and some of the key ships videos for December will all be in. So basically, I'm trying to make sure December is as full as it can be for all of you to watch and hopefully enjoy, but is also as free for me as possible to go and do all the naval history stuff, which is going to be available to be done in December, and all the other work which I'm going to be hopefully doing on books, etc. So, without much further ado, let's see what we've got. I'm told I'm going to start speaking.
Hello, and welcome to 4 Random Books with a bit of a difference.
Do I really sound that posh? Or was I putting on the poshness? Because that really does sound posh. Perhaps I'm posher sounding than I thought I was. But I can't be. This is not a posh accent. But it sounded so posh.
And a bit of the difference is this.
You and your sister's cooking that day,
I'm doing 4 random books all on Brasseys.
Looking a bit tired.
And the plan is to show you, well,
I'm liking the shirt.
A technique which is used by academics and when creating an overview using books which are published like this. This is, of course, it's an annual.
I think I'm going to use this video to explain sampling, aren't I? Oh, now I can work out why it's not being done that well. Who wants to hear about sampling? But it is a very valid technique and actually very useful, and it's very useful for everyone, really. Even if you're not writing papers, sampling books and sampling annuals can help give you a really good overview of things.
And they are published yearly. That's what annuals mean. But some periodicals are published more regularly than this.
I apologise now for the fact I just said that, but believe it or not, it wouldn't be the first time when I've talked about annuals in front of students that not all of them have known what an annual is. I always love it. Sometimes people go back and go, "You're being, you're treating your audience like you're stupid." I'm going, "No, I'm not." The vast majority of audience just ignore that, hopefully, and the ones who need to know it, and the ones who take offence are thinking that I'm speaking literally just to them. I'd love it if I knew, guarantee all my audience knew everything, all that. But actually, sometimes with the things like words annual, etc., it can depend if you've ever been exposed to it, or if English is your first language, etc. So you might not know. There are genuine reasons, other than an abject ability to stick your head in the sand greater than that of an ostrich, that you might not know what words like annual and sometimes other words mean.
And sometimes what we do is, if we want to write about it, but we have limited writing space. Let's say we're producing a shorter article of about 1,000 or so words.
Ooh, so short.
Or less. We will use quotes from a very limited number of those, and we'll pick them in a specific way. You'll set up certain years as your watchwords. So, I'm using what I call my World War II decade books. 1939, 43, 46, and 49. Now, ideally, I would have a fifth book here. I would have 1936. And then that would give me full coverage of before, during, and after. But I as yet do not have 1936, which is good because in many ways it allows me to keep it to 4 random.
Now, I have to admit, I also sometimes mix that up. I now have 42 and 45, and I still have 36. So I have been known to do 42, 45. But the trouble is, I haven't got 48. So you have to keep a consistency, a pattern. I did stop that in a very flattering position for me. Look at that face. And leaving that to one side, you always have to try and keep a consistent pattern. So it's if you're going 369, you do 369, 369 in each decade. If you're going for every 3 years, you don't have to make sure you keep to a constant every 3 years. But the important thing is, when you're sampling, you have to keep some consistency of sampling as accurate and as possible in order to provide relevant data. But you'll notice that there is a bit of an annoying thing when you do the every 3 years, the 3, 6, and 9 in a decade, because you get a 4-year jump. And that always annoys me. But it is a recognised methodology, and if those are the books you can find by searching eBay, Amazon, and everywhere else, that's what you have to deal with. I'm just going to change that face.
And books. And yes, my collection, actually, I have got some of the books in between these dates. But the point is, I'm picking the 3, the 6, the 9, and from each decade. So I'm consistent in my years. Now, there are some academics who apply it in a different way. They apply it sort of every 3 years, which means you get different numbers turning up. So you would have 1940, 43, 46, 49, and probably 1937 as your 5. But I've always been the type who prefers to go with, if I'm sticking with the 3s, the 6s, 9s, then that's 3 from every decade. If I want to do a 5 sample from every decade, I'll go with a 2, 4, 8, onto the zeros. And of course 6, again. 6 gets used a lot. If I want to pick 3 data points, then I'll pick the 0s and the 5s.
6 is actually overwhelmingly sampled. If you go looking through the sampling data of annuals and whenever we're using data like that, the 6 years do turn up a lot because of proximity. It fits in both the 5, if we're doing a 5-point data point sampling of a decade. It fits in the 3 data point sampling of a decade, i.e. the 369. And there's actually, when you're doing what's called the 5 sampling of 2 decades, it also fits in there because you get the 16. Yeah, there's some people who go, well, no, we want to do it every 4 years and over a 2 decade. Okay, fine. How are you going to do that? Well, we're going to take year 4, year 8, year 12, year 16, and year 20. Okay, where's your baseline? Oh, we'll start off with... So that's actually 6 points. No, it's 5 points on a baseline. Okay. Academia. It's fun. But there are reasons for it. As I said, the point is always to keep things as consistent as possibly you can. And again, when you're dealing with history, you're often dealing with changes which take place over such a long period of time that honestly doing a sample every year or a yearly sampling doesn't move anything by that much. Nothing changes that much in a year. You're looking at changes which are spanning a century. If you're looking at ship design, does anything much change in ship design between 1933 and 1934? No. Pick any year in ship design, nothing changes over roughly 12 months. But once you're spanning over a decade, lots of things changed. And suddenly you're talking about those changes. But if you're trying to look at it every single year, you can't really measure it because the changes are going to be so gradual. By the end of the decade, it's visible. But it's not really visible at a yearly points.
It's how you structure it, how many data points you want, how many words you have. This affects what years you're picking. So, Brasseys. I have 39, 43, 46, 49. They're all lovely. And with them, I can get a very nice overview of what happens. I know also that my 1939 is published by Close. My 1946 and 49 are published by Close. My 1943 is published by Macmillan. That's a difference. They're all edited by Rear Admiral H.G. Fursfield, which is nice. It's consistent. And if we start off with 1930...
Academics love that. Consistency. That gives us a consistency data point going through. So if they're all edited by the same person, if they're all published in the same time period, if they all involve roughly the same people, we can track their views are most likely to stay within a sort of similar bounds. So therefore we're going to get a similar level of analysis, but also a similar perspective of analysis. So that's not going to introduce wide variance on the data points.
39. They have all sorts of lovely write-ups in them. They also have all sorts of advertisements for motor torpedo boats. The British powerboat charging ahead of the battle fleet.
I do love those books.
They have a lovely Tribal class destroyer featured here by Thornycroft. And another Tribal class destroyer showing up here. Seems to have Parsons turbines. Seems very popular. Her Majesty's torpedo boat destroyer Eskimo. Always nice to know. But also, apparently, Yarrow and also produced Ivanhoe and a gunboat Tern. And there's also the launch of HMS Belfast, pictured from Harland Wolff. Hood. Hadfields. the various very nice producers with HMS Sheffield, Hadfields of Sheffield, advertising with HMS Sheffield there. These are lovely books. These are really, really gorgeous books, and they are beautiful, full of information. And we also have HMS Cossack. Her first picture in print, really. Second class built at the Naval Yard, High Walker, Newcastle on Tyne. 2 further ships have been this type have been completed at the same yard. They are gorgeous books, and all of them are very similar in terms of them having lots of pictures in them and various cross-sectional pictures.
I have got to share that picture specifically with Gareth, haven't I? Gareth the Brit. Considering all the work he's doing on the Clippers and all the things, I've got to send him that picture. I think that's from the 1939 one, so I will get that out after recording this. Oh, it's up there. Oh. That is the useful thing. They're never really that far away from me. They're never that far away. And as I said, these books are absolutely gorgeous. They really are beautiful. Oh. Picture of HMS Cossack again. So the question is, do we think that young Master Gareth is deserving of having this sent to him? Comment below. Should I take all the photos of all these and send them through to him? I probably should, but you know, I'll be interested to see what the commenters below say. Oh, there you go. Consolidated flying boat design. Lots of aircraft on development. And a Somers class destroyer. Published 1939.
They have silhouettes of aircraft carriers, of all sorts of ships, cruisers. You can go through, you can work out what ship you're looking at. And they have plans and drawings of battleships. There's this Warspite, Queen Elizabeth and Valiant post.
You very quickly realise these books are pretty much what is open source intelligence assets. These books are written by an informed team for a lot of informed teams to be able to read them. They are written and published in Britain and published in Britain and America. And they are basically the open source intelligence you have on all your opponents. And your opponents read them as well. And they also have all the tables, which I'll be getting to in a second, of all the stuff they're doing. And all their weapons are in here. Tables. Tables and tables and tables of data. It's wonderful. But, you know, you think these days we talk about the internet having all the information in and, you know, that's, you know, it's the top of a finger. Well, yeah. Used to you just bought one of these every year. Or Jane's. Or any of the other publications.
Post their upgrades. Well, pre their upgrades, I'd say. 6%. Hood. All sorts of details. Their armor. Their things covered in. It's beautiful. There's Ark Royal here. There's Furious here. They are really gorgeous books. And they have these great things like Consolidated Aircraft Corporation. Marine. This is in the title chapter of Marine Aircraft Fund. Consolidated have designed a flying boat fitted with 4 engines, which are to be liquid cooled and supercharged, and rated at 2,150 horsepower each at sea level. These are to be mounted in the leading edge of the wing and will drive tractor air screws through extensions to the crankshafts. Each of the 4 engines is to be accessible for servicing and minor repairs during flight. Consolidated claimed that a reduction in the number of engines from 6 to 4 will result in increased efficiency. The design envisaged an aircraft with 3 decks. while 36 of the 100 passengers will be housed in the wing, at the expense of a slight thickening and resultant small increase in drag. In this arrangement, the engineers were faced with the problem of dividing the cabins by the wing bulkheads, but the difficulty was overcome by putting the main bulkheads at the sides of each compartment and using auxiliary arch ribs between, which do not affect the headroom. The development of the wing for this purpose proved to have been another advantage in that the covering used to take normal wing bending loads would be able, without further reinforcement, to withstand the pressure loads incurred in a flight in the substratosphere. The remaining 64 passengers are accommodated in cabins from either 2 or 4 in the ship's hull. Dining room is situated on the middle deck and enables 18 persons to sit down at one time. A commodious lounge is provided on the top deck. Quarters for 7 of the crew are provided in the after portion of the flying boat, while there is an additional cabin for 2 of the crew in the forward portion.
Anyone here would really like the idea of sleeping in the wing? Anyone? Please, again, comment below.
Three mail and freight compartments are envisaged, one in the nose of the aircraft beneath the pilot's compartment, another in the leading edge directly over the galley, and the third in the tail. The tail is to be of the normal twin fin and rudder type. Occupying the whole of the forward part of the upper deck are the operating quarters for the pilot, second pilot, flight engineer, radio operator, and navigator. Besides these, 11 others can be carried. It's rather quite sort of a wonderful looking aircraft, but oh my, is it going to be fun to fly. Boeing flying boat designs. Vickers Supermarine Walrus amphibious flight near Gibraltar. And it's got beautiful chapters. The Empire Air Base and Her Majesty's Aircraft Carrier Ark Royal, carrier-borne units of the Royal Navy. So we've got Ark Royal, has home fleet, 800 and 803 Squadron fighters, 814, 820, 821 TSRs, and 810 TR. Flag of Rear Admiral aircraft carriers is carried in Ark Royal. Glorious in the Mediterranean. Argus is carrying the Fleet Requirements Unit.
The annoying thing for the Royal Navy is that the 3 carriers which are fitted up for Flag Command, Ark Royal, Courageous, and Glorious, are the ones which are lost earliest in the war. They're the carriers which the fleet carriers they actually lose, the only ones they lose. So that's half of the fun you end up with the later half of World War II, where the designs being pumped out are based on the Illustrious class, etc., which don't have the flag spaces included, because they weren't supposed to be the flag spaces for the rear admiral aircraft carriers. That wasn't going to be their job. That admiral was going to sit on the strike carrier. While the fleet carriers did the job of protecting the fleet and providing the limited strikes, the strike carrier provides the alpha punch, and that's at the direct command of the rear admiral aircraft carriers. He coordinates the other carriers from his carrier.
Photographic section and Queen Bee unit from the Royal Air Force. Hermes is conducting officers on the training role. Eagles in China with 813 and 822 at TSRs. And they're talking about new developments. This is in 1939. Helicopters. It has been stated in the press that 4 helicopter machines are on order for the Air Fleet Air Arm, but details have not been made public. Development of this type continues in France and Germany. The von Aspoff helicopter in Paris began as a small machine with a 180 horsepower engine, driving 2 coaxial propellers of 16-foot 4-inch in diameter in opposite directions. It lifted 1,320 pounds.
That's always an interesting thing to think about. If World War II doesn't start till 1942, there are odds-on chances that helicopters could actually be, or at least a version of helicopters, could actually be in service with navies. Think about what an impact that could have on anti-submarine warfare if helicopters are already in service. Because dipping sonar, etc., that is well on the way to already being developed. That's already forms of that being developed already for ships. So you might have helicopters in service before war begins.
At at an initial rate of climb of about 14 feet per second. The next model is to have 36 feet propellers and is expected to lift 2,210 pounds at 29 feet per second. A still larger model is projected with 55-foot propellers and a 2,000 horsepower engine. It is expected to lift 4,300 pounds, useful and load vertically to 20,000 feet in 9.5 minutes, and by tilting the propellers, is expected to achieve 270 miles per hour forward speed. The landing speed in all these models is, in the event of engine failure, i.e. auto-rotational descent, is designed not to exceed 16 feet per second, so that even a forced landing should be quite safe in restricted space, providing that the pilot has directional control in such contingency. This directional control during auto-rotational descent seems to be one of the most difficult problems to solve on this type of machine. The Fokker-Wulf helicopter is the most efficient of these, which are being developed in Germany. In June, it secured the record for helicopters by a flight of 143 miles from Brenner to Ransdorf near Berlin. It has two free-bladed lifting propellers of 65 feet diameter, driven by 160 horsepower Brandenburg engines. Its initial rate of climb is 8 feet per second, and it's capable of hovering or flying backwards. Most of the sea exercises of this year, in which air forces, whether the Fleet or RAF have played a substantial part, are described in Chapter 1. From the air, rather than the general point of view, however, there are certain points to which it is of interest to draw attention. The following notes do not contain complete accounts of the exercises to which they refer. They should therefore be read in conjunction with part of Chapter 1. Sorry, I just added that in because this book just has all sorts of things. It's talking about exercises in Singapore, it's talking about exercises. It's just... They are really, really beautiful books.
And there are honestly exercises which you find talked about in these books that you cannot find their records for in the National Archives. It's fun.
And they go into all the different navies and what they're up to. And
although I have to say, with a couple of those, I have a suspicion that the file naming is different. That the naming of those exercises in the National Archives is different than the naming in the books. I really do, because looking through a couple of the exercises which are not mentioned in the books, but there are file records for, and going through them, it looks, broadly speaking to me, like they're talking about the same exercise, but they've got different names for it. And these are ones which are getting closer to World War II, and I'm wondering if at that point someone's trying some fancy security exercise or operational security by giving different names to the exercise when they're reporting them. It's a theory. It is a theory.
they're just gorgeous. Let's see. Let's go through the chapter titles for this one. So we have Naval Events of 1939, Foreign Navies, Relative Naval Strength, the British Maritime Industries, Cruisers, Command of the Sea by Dr. Herbert Rosinski, Visits to the Navies of South America, the Surveying Service, Vice Admiral J. E. Egel, Hydrographer of the Navy, The Making of a Seaman, Merchant Seaman and Fisherman, British Naval Air Progress, Foreign Fleet Air Arms, the Interdependence of Home Defense and Commerce Protection, the Interdependence of the Home Defense and Trade Defense, Marine Aircraft Development, and North Atlantic Flights in 1938. By Lieutenant Colonel H. Burnell, General Manager, Imperial Airways. And it's got a full reference section. They are gorgeous. This is going to be a long 4 random books. So, next you would go to 1943. Same editor. So, this one's chapters are Review of 1942, Naval Chronicle of 1942, Foreign Navies, The War of Shipping on Shipping and Supplies. Air Operations and the War at Sea by Major Oliver Stewart. The Modern Conception of Sea Power by Admiral Sir Herbert Richmond. The U-Boat War. Submarines and Light Coastal Craft in 1942. U.S. Navy official documents compiled by the editor.
And that is the Richmond who is the naval theorist. This is the thing. That's the guy who's teaching in Cambridge, etc. These things, and the person whose books I get out and occasionally quote at you, and discuss, because he is a good theorist. I don't agree with everything he says. I think he does get very, very academic. He gets completely swallowed by whichever institution he's in. When he's part of the Navy and he's writing theory as Navy, he sounds like it sounds like he's only talking to naval officers because he talks in so much naval speak. And then there is a period where he's transitioning between the two, where he's actually very intelligible to a wider audience, and then by the end of it, he's talking with such florid academic language that honestly, you need to be in almost a literature archaeologist to dig out exactly what he's saying.
Sea Power and the Air Weapon. And a full section. The front piece, which is missing, I think, potentially. Front piece, which is missing, to my knowledge, which is sad. Oh no, it isn't. Thank God. Is HMS Illustrious. There is none of the advertisements. They seem to have been cut out. The advertisements, which is rather sad. They aren't in the back. It's rather upsetting, that one. But HMS Illustrious is still there. So I still have her, which is always gorgeous. And then they've got corvettes of the Canadian Navy in here somewhere. Ah, yes, corvettes of the Canadian Navy. All sorts of pictures and silhouettes and information about the Italian cruisers. And you can imagine naval officers in their period, quite honestly, looking through here going, what are we going to have to fight? What is coming our way? What are we going to be having to deal with? And there's full details of the German fleet in here. It's gorgeous as ever. It's not quite as flashy as the pre-war one. You can tell the difference of time. But they do have all the details of the Southamptons, of the Japanese cruise battleships, air cruisers.
It does keep stuttering, doesn't it? I hope I've improved recording-wise since this time, and I hope I've got better. But it's annoying to me because, you see, I could have played the video back from the unuploaded version, and that doesn't have any stuttering in it. Doesn't have any of those little pots. I did check it before I did this, but I thought, no, I'll do it from the YouTube, so I'll see exactly what it's like on the YouTube. And I still, to this day, do not know what's caused, in some of the older videos especially, but the stuttering.
Illustrious, victorious, formidable, and indomitable, all listed under the same title.
That was the Royal Navy.
You love this. Great Britain battleships Nelson and Rodney, this silhouette. Nelson has a crane amidships. Rodney has a catapult fitted on the sea turret. Mast structure is increased. Little notes. Battleships Ramillies, Resolution, Revenge, and Royal Sovereign. Resolution has a...
Don't necessarily trust the silhouette descriptions of Allied ships. Not 100%.
Smoke deflector on the turret funnel. Ramillies and Resolution have tripod masts, a catapult next turret, and a crane abreast mainmast. Main top gallant mast fitted. Fore top mast removed. Speed of is also easy to scale, so they give you a real idea of what they fought of them and how big they were. Also, there's a cute Swedish battleship there. List of foreign naval attaches accredited to Great Britain at this time. British naval attaches accredited to foreign countries, so you can track them down, who is what and where. Commander H.D. Johnson is appointed in July 1942 to Montevideo.
Always useful information. Always useful information to have that. You think about it again, it's open source intelligence, but it is useful information to have as to who you go and report information to if you
These are just priceless books. And I always do some reading from it, so
HMS Hood.
Let's pick Germany. Apart from the U-boat campaign, the German Navy's activities in 1942 were chiefly confined to unsuccessful attacks on British convoys bound for North Russia. Inability to stop these convoys had little to do with German military disasters on the Eastern Front last winter, and after the repulse suffered by the enemy of Bear Island at the hands of Captain R.S. St. Vincent Sherbrooke, VC RN, on December 31st, a scapegoat was evidently demanded. Hence the super.
Yes, I have done a video about him and stuff he did. I got up to because, of course, he was a tribal class officer. He was an officer from the tribal class. He had actually commanded HMS Cossack during the Battle of Narvik, and it was him who Vian had basically said, "You are working yourself so hard, you're tired, so I will take your ship and you can look after my ship while it's in dry dock being repaired." And that's why Vian's on Cossack during the Altmark incident.
A succession of Gross Admiral Raeder by one of his subordinates shortly afterwards. The former's dismissal may well be compared with the retirement of Tirpitz in March 1916. Though the circumstances differed, both Tirpitz and Raeder had long been in office and had important achievements to their credit. At the end of 1942, the huge battle of Tirpitz was lying at Trondheim, together with the armoured ships Admiral Scheer and Lutzow, heavy cruiser Admiral Hitler. In the Baltic were the battleships Scharnhorst and Gneisenau, the latter still under repair, and the aircraft carrier Graf Zeppelin. It seemed that the last named ships were regarded as a failure, or else her trials had given evidence of serious defects in her construction, for there has been no attempt to use her for any offensive purpose.
She's never actually fully completed. Never fully completed. But the British are never sure, but it's always presented as she might come out. And it's another reason why, again, it's questions I have to get people go, why is it always one of the better carriers? Why don't they just rely on Furious and older carriers in terms of, and the older and smaller carriers in terms of the North Atlantic? Why do they always have one of the better illustrious class carriers, worked up carriers there? Because they're not sure the Graf Zeppelin won't come out.
Nor is there any news of her sister ship understood to have been named the Peterstrasse, having been completed. Though in France it has been asserted that the 4 German cruisers of over 7,000 tons begun in 1939 have passed into service, they have not yet been sighted at sea, so far as publishing information goes. U-boats which have been destroyed are reported to include U-12, U-14, U-15, U-16, U-18, U-19, U-25, U-27, U-28, U-31, U-32, U-33, U-35, U-36, U-38, U-39, U-41, U-42, U-43, U-44, U-64, U-85, U-103, U-104, U-105, U-106, U-107, U-108, U-109, and U-110, in addition to the list given in last year's issue of this annual. The majority of these numbers have come from neutral sources. According to the latest information available in this country, the rate of destruction of U-boats has recently increased.
One of the things I would point out is that apparently in response to one of the books, in one year, I forget which was, there was actually a letter received from Germany from an officer complaining that his boat had not been sunk. These books did get around. If you're on for sale, they get bought, and some of them would end up in Switzerland and various other neutral countries, and then they might go from a neutral country to an enemy country. and so we'd go backwards and forwards. And occasionally, just like today, we like to think that certain video games are new in being open source of intelligence because of people reacting to them and going, no, 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 you've got this wrong. I've got this data. I can show the quality of my vehicles or my systems. Yeah, it's not new.
Like coastal craft corresponding to our motor gunboats and motor torpedo boats and classed by the enemy as Schnellboot, have been roughly handled on several occasions by our own light forces in the Channel and North Sea during the past year. 8 have been sunk and at least one is known to have fallen into our hands more or less intact. German surface destroyers have been less prominent during 1942, though one was scuttled to avoid capture by the United States Navy in South Atlantic, according to an American announcement in January 1943. And there's a lovely picture of USS Wasp. It's really cool. So, Brasseys Naval Annual 1946. Ooh. It's a return of HMS Amphibian, HMS Swiftsure, of the beautiful advertising. Parsons Marine Turbines with a picture of Turbina and Warspite. Oh, it's gorgeous.
It is a good picture.
HMS Lafaurie now. It's the destroyer for Yarrow. Hood still in John Brown and Company's advertisement. After being sunk, beautiful, they'd have moved on. HMS Anson. Camel Laird have a picture of Mauritania. Oh, Thorny Crossed. HMS Brecon. Hunt class destroyer. Oh, she looks good, doesn't she?
Picture. It is a good picture.
HMS Anson appearing again for Swan and Hunter. I do like Anson and Swan and Hunter. R. Warthorn Leslie, shipbuilders, engineers, and repairers have decided to go with a picture of what looks like a Colossus class, light fleet carrier. Oof. Imperial Chemical Industries have gone with Nelson. Always a good one to go with. Seafang, Spiteful, Seafire, Spitfire, all from Vickers Armstrong Limited. Aircraft section, Supermarine Works. High Performance Fighters. On combat duty, 8 out of every 9 British naval aircraft were Fairy types. Swordfish, Barracuda, Fulmar, Firefly, ooh, Blackburn, a Firebrand.
I think there's a lot of effort going into British types, 8 out of 9 British types, with fairy aircraft, and there's a lot of other things going into that particular claim. A lot of things going into that claim.
Ooh, greatest name in wireless, Marconi. And that looks like a sort of strange sort of hybrid picture between an Ark Royal and Illustrious class.
Someone's idea of what
that is definitely an Illustrious class. Brown Bobbers supplied the following auxiliaries to Illustrious class carriers: steering gears, accelerators for launching aircraft, hydraulic pumping plant, operating gears for wireless technology.
Not called catapults from carriers, they're called accelerators. Because catapults were what you used to fling them off from regular ships. Accelerators were what you used to launch them from a flight deck on a carrier. That's now changed, but, in that time it was fairly simple and straightforward.
Brown Brothers and Company, reliable manufacturers. HMS Pioneer. One of Unicorn's follow-ons.
Got adapted.
Right, let's see. Review of the past year. Lessons of the War by Fursfield. A Naval Chronicle. Foreign Navies. The Restoration of British Shipping. The Air War at Sea by Major Oliver Stewart. The French Navy After the War by M.H. Lamasson. Strategy of Japan by Dr. H. Rosinski. Aircraft and Naval Warfare by Volage. I'm presuming a pen name, rather like the ones you get in Warships International Fleet Review. Royal Naval Air Service,
Odin.
1911 to 1917, by Air Commodore L. McLean.
I know you watch my channel.
Naval Planning for an Amphibious Operation by Commander George Stitt. And Naval Loss in the War by G.H. Herford. This is going to be an interesting one. Ooh, surrendered U-boats pictured in here. HMS Magpie. Let's go straight to the Far Eastern Pacific. During the month of January, the US Navy actively supported and supplied the military forces engaged in completing the recapture of the Philippines, especially the northern island of Luzon, after a heavy bombardment of shore installations by a powerful Allied fleet, including battleships, cruisers, destroyers, and rocket-firing craft, and heavy bombing by aircraft and Allied aircraft lasting for several hours. Very large forces of Lieutenant General Kruger's U.S. Sixth Army, under the personal command of General MacArthur, landed in Lingayen Gulf on the morning of January 9th. 4 beaches were seized with very little ground resistance. The naval escort of the invasion armada, including Her Majesty's HMA cruiser Shropshire and HMA destroyers Arunta and Waranga, under Commodore H.B. Farnacombe.
Tribals.
During the approach through the Mindanao Strait and along the west coast of Mindoro, and also during the landings, the convoy was heavily attacked by Japanese aircraft and naval light craft and suffered some damage. The enemy lost 79 aircraft, 2 destroyers, a midget submarine, and other vessels. This landing was an obvious threat to the capital, Manila, 120 miles to the south, to the important naval base of Cavite. It also enabled the Americans to build up on the beachhead vast stores of military supplies for further penetration of the island. These were ferried ashore by a great flotilla of amphibious craft. A number of suicide attempts were made against Allied ships. Individual Japanese or small groups, putting out in rowing boats or swimming, tried to throw hand grenades onto the decks or to attach TNT charges to the hulls. Attempts were also made to ram Allied vessels with barges filled with dynamite. Most of the efforts proved fatal to the attackers, and the damage done by them was small. On January 11th, US carrier-borne aircraft assisted in bombing key points and bridges on the Lingayen and Manila Railway and the Manila airfields. The ports on the northeast shore of Lingazan Gulf, Banjero, San Fernando, and Rosario were subjected to heavy naval bombardment and air attack. US warships continued to shell Japanese batteries in the area and attempted to bring the beachhead under fire. Well, obviously, it gives you every month and the Naval Chronicle. During the month of January, the following warships were reported lost: British destroyers, HMS Alderman, frigate Capel, in operations for the liberation of Europe; United States destroyer USS Reed, in action in the Philippines; submarine Harder. And they go through every single theatre. It's just... there is no other resource quite like a Brasseys.
No.
None at all.
There really isn't. It's one of those interesting things in that you have both Janes and Brasseys have their own strengths and weaknesses, and whilst they are both naval annuals and both naval works, they are different, and they cannot be treated as being the same because they do have these differences, and they have these differences of opinions and content and nuances, and it gives you richness to have both, but it also depends on you, what you are doing with them, which one is going to be better suited to your work. There are some works where some projects I work on where frankly Brasseys doesn't suit it. Jane's is the better details for me to go through. Jane's is the more appropriate. But there are others where Brasseys are better, and sometimes it's both. But often, especially in smaller, shorter, less than 10,000 word projects, it's a mixture. It's one or the other. Although saying that, I haven't done many shorter projects recently. I've got to do some more writing. I'll article writing. I'm going to try and get some done in November. That's one of the reasons why I'm doing so many videos in October. I love the way he's giving me time to talk. Past me is so generous.
1949. And help time on that. Ooh, 27 minutes past. Chester reference library copy. This was originally.
It's taken you 27 minutes to get to there, mate. It's taken me 50 minutes. Okay. You missed out a lot of stuff, or I don't know. I talk more.
Vosper Thornycroft, still producing these small little boats. 1949, still viable. Armor-piercing projectiles by Hadfields of Sheffield. Now show a beautifully designed shell.
It is a cool picture.
HMS Agincourt has come in. Yes, the battle class our destroyers are here. And HMS Scorpion. She's looking good. Hull on the Wolf, and now going aircraft carrier.
I do not claim my reaction to ship designs are in any way normal or what they should be. I spent too long of my life around with them. I've got too many pictures of them. The pictures on my walls are all of warships in my bedroom. I'm sorry to say this. They're all of warships. They always have been of warships.
And they literally have 3 of them next to each other. Ooh, Thornycroft Naval Craft. HMS Crossbow, the 101st Thornycroft destroyer for the British Navy. HMS Brecon, a Hunt-class destroyer Thornycroft design. The 70-foot Thornycroft motor torpedo boat. The 35-foot 20-knot launch, large numbers of which are in naval service. Oh, another battle-class destroyer. Oh, 2 of them. It's good. Gorgeous pictures in this one. This is going to be a far, far longer than normal.
Saying that, I am slightly worried about some of my reactions going on that. I am slightly worried about it. Not worried enough to do anything about it, but slightly worried about it.
More 15 minutes, but you know, it's worth it because it's gorgeous. Firebrand 5, the Navy strike aircraft. Some beautiful advertising. I like the advertising in these books. Again, Marconi with eyes and ears for the navies of the world. And now it's MV Ranganito, a twin-screw passenger and freighter carrier constructed by Vickers Armstrong Limited Naval Yard, Walker on Time for New Zealand Shipping Company Ltd.
Limited.
The 60th year of publication, 1949.
Remember that?
The influence of sea power today, Chapter 1. And Chapter 2, the Naval Year.
They start off in 1889. There is no real coincidence in the fact that when you've got increased naval spending and increased defense spending from 1889 onwards, that's when a lot of things like Brasseys, etc. get started.
Foreign Navy, Chapter 3, the Foreign Navies. Chapter 4, the Three-Dimensional Naval Defense. United States Defense Structure by Rear Admiral H.G. Fursfield. Naval Marine Engineering Progress. New Naval Sciences. Reference section. Dimensional particulars of ships of the larger navies. Ships of the lesser navies. Reference section. Miscellaneous. Statement on Defense, 1949. Supplementary Navy Estimates. Abstract of Navy Estimates. First Lord's Statement. Explanatory of Estimates. Proclamation on Prize Money. And Principal Naval Officials, British and Foreign, British Naval Missions Abroad, and Naval Attaches. Let's go. Well, there's all sorts of pictures, but I know the moment I mentioned it, there is only one option for me to go to. And that is page 206. Draft Royal Proclamation granting prize money to the Royal Navy.
Yeah.
Royal Marines and the Royal Air Force, and regulated distribution to the Royal Navy and Royal Marines, November 1948. Whereas by the Prize Act 1948 is provided that if we are pleased by proclamation or order of council to signify attention to make a grant of prize money out of the proceeds of prize captured in late war, there shall be paid into the Royal Navy Prize Fund the sum of, or sums amounting in aggregate to £4 million, and into the Royal Air Force Prize Fund the sum of, or sums amounting in aggregate to £1,250,000. And further, that sums of such respective amounts as we may be said by the said proclamation or order in the council determined shall be distributed out of the Royal Navy Prize Fund, in such manner as we may so determine, to such persons who are or have been members of any of our naval and marine forces, or of the crews raised by government in the United Kingdom, or any of our ships of war, or in the case of their death, the representatives, as we may so determine. Whereas by the Naval Agency and Distribution Act 1864, it is provided that money distributable among officers and crew of any of our ships of war in respect towards awards made in several cases therein mentioned, so far as full provision respecting distribution thereof is not made by or under any Act of Parliament other than that Act, shall be distributed under the direction of Lords Commissioners, the Admiralty, in the shares in the behalf specified in any royal proclamation or order of council.
Look, I'm not saying there was a reason that my family always seemed to gravitate towards the naval service, but you just did hear the prize money allotted to the naval service versus the Royal Air Force. And also, no mention of the army getting any. I love my family history. I love my family. I have no illusions of them. Have I gone to sleep? No, I'm still reading. This is the thing.
It is a lot of money.
These days, I tend to have it tabbed in books when I'm doing book reviews. So I tab between a section, and then I have clear tab, and I have a little note on it saying, look up now, and put book down. Because I get distracted by the books, and forget I'm on camera.
Let's see, anything interesting in here? Fuel oils. In 1939, most of the boiler oil used in British warships was of Persian fuel to Admiralty specifications. With the closing of Mediterranean in 1941, the majority of the fuel supplies had to come from Trinidad, Venezuela, and East American ports. These supplies were not up to the pre-war standard, and this standard fell progressively lower as the increasing demands for aviation spirit made a greater degree of refining necessary. During the war, much trouble was experienced from the contamination of fuel oil by seawater. This contamination was partly caused by leaks developing in fuel tanks of both warships and tankers under severe wartime steaming conditions, and partly due to the necessity for ballasting fuel tanks at sea for ship stability reasons. To a limited extent, these troubles were overcome by the provision of settling and sullage tanks. But early experiences indicated that wartime fuels were liable to form a stable emulsion with seawater that could not be broken down by heating. Burning of sea-contaminated fuels resulted in a considerable and often rapid deterioration of furnace brickwork and the formation of bonded deposits in the gas passages, particularly around superheated tubes. Before 1939, when using a mixture of different fuel oils, the United States Navy had experienced choking of filters and fuel heaters. They later included stability and compatibility tests in their fuel specifications. For the war in the Pacific, it was necessary that Iranian fuels should be fully compatible with those from American sources, and by modification to the refinery procedure at Abadan, it was found possible to achieve this. Up to now, gas turbines have been operated only on light fuels. Any large-scale deployment of this type of propulsion for warships will necessitate the use of heavy fuel oil, and although it does not appear to have had any immediate implication to naval machinery, mention should be made of the experimental burning of heavy fuel oil in the main engines of the motor tanker Araucaria in 1946-48. The main principle of this modification consists of extracting impurities in the heavy oil by means of two centrifugal separators, one being described as the purifier and the other as a clarifier. These trials have been most successful, and saving in running costs is considerable. Fuel oil matters. These books are great. And the reason you pick out those different years is it gives you a way to chart it successfully. So in 40 minutes, I have gone through 4 books and have crossed an entire decade of World War II.
Close to 40 minutes, not quite. Within 40 minutes, yes, but technically you're roughly 37 minutes.
It's basically a form of sampling, but it's a slightly specialized form of sampling because it's both quantitative, in that you are deciding how many sample points you're going to pick, and qualitative because you're making a judgment as to which chapters match up best to analyze. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed this very extended version of 4 random books. They will be back to their normal 15 minutes, but in future, they probably won't all be Brasseys.
It's also weightlifting.
Thank you. Take care. And as planned, this will be one of the first ones to come out in the new year. So I will say happy 2021.
Good
Take
Lord.
care. Bye. Oh, and if you're still watching, please subscribe, please share, please tweet. It all helps. And there's a little bell down there as well. If you press it, you'll know when another of these comes up. Thank you.
Cool. Well, what do I say to that? Well, thank you for adding in a note for me past Alex. It's really helpful. I recorded that back in 2020. It's a good little video, honestly. I quite liked what I talked about. I think the books were good. I'm really not sure why it's got such low viewership. I really am not sure about that. But yeah, it's currently got, if I look at the analytics, it's had, since it was published, 164 views. No idea why. Okay, I'm not the fastest talker in the world. I will admit that. But I thought it was an interesting topic, and I thought it were interesting books. No idea about that one. Anyway, I'm going to say thank you very much for watching. I hope you're enjoying, and I'm hoping you like this series. This is going to go out on Wednesday, the 11th of October, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much. And please do remember, does Gareth deserve those pictures? I'll send this to a link to this video to him so he can, wade in on the debate himself.